we're doing inequalities and their graphs. Don't worry, they're just line graphs. They're not coordinate plane graphs, which I feel like are the ones that everyone complains about. So inequalities and their graphs. Basically what you're gonna start with today is you're gonna have an expression. It's gonna be words, okay? And what you need to do is you need to turn it into an inequality expression. So here's where we're gonna start. Example number 1. Okay, if I say all real numbers, that's an A, sorry. All real numbers x less than or equal to -7. All real numbers x less than or equal to -7, okay? Your job today is going to be, how do I turn that into math letters and symbols, okay? So the first thing you got to look at is what represents what. So this is saying all real numbers x, okay? That's just x to us. So we're going to put an x there. Then it says less than or equal to. Do you know what less than or equal to looks like? Yeah, one of these, right? Less than or equal to the Pac-Man. Which way is your Pac-Man or your alligator or however you learned about those? Which way is it facing? So which way does it open up to? Does it open to the right or to the left? If it's less than or equal to. It's going to open to the right. So less than or equal to, remember the equal to, you put the line underneath. So x less than or equal to, and then your last one is you have -7. So your expression, when they give you these words, you're writing x is less than or equal to -7. Okay? Should be familiar to you, hopefully. But we're going to do a few just to make sure. How about this one? If I say 6 less than a number k is greater than 13. Okay? Now, here's the key thing I need you to notice. This is saying 6 less than a number k. This is saying is greater than. Okay? When that is in there, that's when it's a symbol. You learned that first part, 6 less than a number k. You learned that at the very beginning of chapter 1. Do you remember how you write 6 less than k? Not 6 minus k, but you're close. What did less than and more than require we do? You had to flip them, right? Okay, so when it says 6 less than a number k, you're actually doing k minus 6 for that one. Okay? And then you're going to do your symbol, is greater than. So is there a line underneath this one? No. Is greater than is just going to have that Pac-Man mouth opening to the left, okay? And then the number 13. So your expression is k minus 6 is greater than 13. Make sense? Okay, so we're going to talk about solutions to these inequalities. If you look at, well, a solution is any number that makes the inequality true, right? So let's just look at a second example here. Second type of problem. If I said we have 2x plus 1 is greater than -3, okay, that's my inequality. And I say, is -3 a solution? Okay, how do you suppose you determine that? How do you figure out if -3 is a solution to this? What do you got to do? Plug it in, right? You're going to take that x and you're going to replace it with a negative 3. So we're going to say, is 2 times negative 3 plus 1, is that greater than negative 3? And then we just simplify. So 2 times negative 3 is what? Negative 6. What's negative 6 plus 1? Be careful. Negative 5 or 7?
5.
Negative 5. Okay, so basically what we're saying is negative 5 is greater than negative 3. Is that true? No, right? If you think about a number line, this would be negative 5, this would be negative 4, this would be negative 3. This one's bigger. This is saying negative 5 is bigger. So it's not actually greater than, right? So when it says, is it a solution? Our answer is no. And this is what you should be showing me. You don't have to show me the number line. I was just showing you that to represent it. Okay? How about same inequality? Okay? 2x plus 1 is greater than negative 3. Is negative 1 a solution? So we're going to plug in negative 1. 2 times negative 1 plus 1 is greater than negative 3. So you have negative 2 plus 1 is greater than negative 3. What's negative 2 plus 1? Negative 1. Is negative 1 greater than negative 3? Yes. So we would say yes, negative 1 is a solution. Okay, so it's just a matter of you plugging it in and simplifying and seeing if it's true. When they ask you, is it a solution, you're just checking, is this true? Okay? Questions on that? Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about how graphs work with this stuff. So if we're going to graph, we're just going to do it on a number line. So you don't need special paper for this. You're just going to draw your own graphs in. They're very basic. There's nothing real fancy to them. If I said graph n is less than 1. Okay, we're going to do that one. We're going to do a is greater than or equal to 0. We're going to do f is greater than negative 3. And we're going to do negative 2 is greater than or equal to x. Okay, so a couple of things you need to note. There's two different types of symbols, right? There's less than and greater than. And there's less than or equal to and greater than or equal to. They give you two different types of things. Those symbols are how you determine, is it a closed dot or is it an open dot where you plot your number, okay? So for these first two, it's open because we're not including the number we're talking about. If n is less than 1, then 1 is not included. So you leave that open, but that's where we start, okay? If it's with the equal to, then it's a closed dot because we want to include 0. 0 is one of our answers on this one, okay? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to plot a point, okay? So here's my 1. N is less than 1. That's going to be an open dot because we're not including 1. Which direction do I go with my arrow? If n has to be less than 1, it's all the numbers to the left of 1 or to the right of 1? To the left of 1. Okay, so your graph is going to look like that. Okay, the next one, a is greater than or equal to 0. You plot 0. Is that an open dot or a closed dot? Closed. We're including 0. So you close that dot. And which direction does my arrow go? If a has to be greater than or equal to 1. Nathan, will you put your bag on the ground? Thank you. A is greater than or equal to 0. Which way do I go? Left or right? To the right. We want it to be greater than 0, right? So 1 would work or 2 would work. Anything to the right will work. Okay, now let me show you a little trick. As long as your variable is the thing you start with, your symbol makes an arrow, and that tells you what direction to go. Ryan, will you put your iPad away? I don't want you to get the homework done. I want you to learn the lesson. What? Great. Listen and then do the homework when I give you time to work. So if I turn it into an arrow, look at this top number right now. My arrow is pointing left, right? A is greater than or equal to 0. If I turn it into an arrow, my arrow is now pointing to the right, which is what my graph did, okay? So which direction is this arrow going to point, left or right? To the right. If I turn this into an arrow, right, it's pointing right. So you plot a point at -3. Is this one open or closed? Open. Sorry, you can't hardly see that there's no line there, but there's no line there. And we point it to the right. Okay? Now this last one is the only exception, because what do you notice that's different about this last one? It doesn't start with the variable. Okay? So if I were you, what I would do on these is I would turn it around. I would always put the variable first. So if I put the variable first, then I have to flip my sign around, right? Because it's saying -2 is greater than or equal to x. We're going to say x is less than or equal to -2. And now it still does the same thing. So -2, open or close dot, close dot. Which way does my arrow go? To the left. Everybody sings that song when we do that. Because it has the equal to underneath it.
So if it's equal to?
Whenever it's this, it's closed, because if it's equal to 2, it could include 2, right? Whereas if it's f is greater than -3, it can't include 3. It has to be more than that. Okay, Jayla?
So the direction that the arrow goes, does that depend on like the sign where it like says A and 0?
So like on this problem, right, you had A is greater than or equal to 0. Well, if I turn that into an arrow, my arrow now is pointing to the right. So you start at 0, you close that dot, and you point your arrow to the right.
So
Am I answering your question?
Equal to, it's gonna be closed, the dot's gonna be closed?
If it's got the equal to, it's going to be closed. So greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to.
And then,
Right here. Those two are closed.
And then if it's not.
These two are open.
So how do you like know which way the arrow goes?
So when the symbol's there, as long as your variable comes first, that arrow tells you where it goes, right? It points to the left or it points to the right, as long as your variable's first. Or you can just think about it, right? If we're saying A has to be greater than 0, then A could be 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So you have to go in that direction. Excuse me. Any other questions on that? Okay, so that's the graphing portion of it. How about if I gave you a graph, could you come up with the inequality? Okay, let's say this is my graph. So we would say we have x, we have -1. You have to figure out what symbol goes between there. X is what? First of all, is the equal sign going to be underneath it? Open or closed dot?
It's gonna be open.
It will be there, right? Because it's a closed dot. So you know there's going to be a line underneath your greater than or less than. Which direction? Is it greater than or less than? Greater than. You're going to go this way because my arrow is going to the right. X has to be greater than or equal to -1 would come from that graph. Okay? Okay, so what would this one be? This is 4. Open dot. Arrow this way. So you know you have x, you know you have 4. Is there going to be a line under our inequality? No. What is it, less than or greater than?
Less than.
It's less than. X is less than 4 would be your inequality. Okay? Questions on that? Okay, so tell me this. If you saw a sign on the freeway that says 55 miles per hour, could you write an inequality for your speed? Your speed has to be what? 55. But does it have to be less than or equal to, right? Because 55 is the max that you want. So you would say your speed is less than or equal to 55. Elijah, you want a phone?
You have a phone, do you?
Okay, that's the